7 signs that you're giving more, and she may never give back at the same level. This statement isn't meant to accuse anyone of taking advantage of you. It simply raises a basic question that many people avoid who is actually holding this relationship together. If you're the one who regularly starts conversations, the one who thinks about how to keep things from becoming tense, the one who adjusts yourself so everything flows more smoothly, then there's a good chance you're giving more than you realize. Not for a day or two, but over a period long enough that it starts to feel normal. The signs that follow aren't meant to push you into a conclusion right now. They're meant to help you understand more clearly where you're standing. And the first sign begins with something very small, something that's often overlooked. The first sign is that you're almost always the one who initiates everything. You text first, not because you have more free time, but because if you don't, nothing usually happens. You're the one who calls first, the one who thinks about what to say so the mood stays comfortable. You're also the one who plans ahead, whether it's meeting up, deciding where to go, what to do, or even initiating serious conversations. At first, you don't see a problem. You tell yourself that you just care a little more, that being a bit more proactive will make the relationship better. And at the beginning, things do seem fine, but over time, you start to notice something strange. If you slow down, if you stay quiet for a bit, if you stop being the one who gets things started, the relationship slows down too. No one else pushes it forward except you. She isn't wrong. You aren't wrong either. It's just that the momentum is flowing in only one direction. And when a relationship moves forward solely because one person keeps trying, that person grows more and more exhausted, while the other gradually gets used to standing still. The second sign is when you're almost always the one who has to explain. You explain your feelings, you explain why you're hurt, why you went quiet, why you reacted the way you did, and not only that, you also explain her behavior to her. You tell yourself she must be tired, stressed, that she didn't mean anything by it. Whenever something feels off, you're the one who steps in to reconnect, to soften the atmosphere, to make everything easier to understand. You don't do this because you enjoy analyzing things, but because you're afraid that if you don't speak up, if you don't explain everything, we'll drift further apart. Over time, you realize you're carrying the emotional work for both of you. You're the one who thinks ahead, feels ahead, and speaks first to prevent conflict. She doesn't need to understand as much, because you've already understood on her behalf. This is what people call emotional labor, but put simply, it means you're doing the work of keeping the relationship stable almost entirely on your own. And it's important to say this clearly, it's not because you're weak, not because you lack strength or backbone. It's because you don't want to lose. You choose explaining over confronting. You choose smoothing things over instead of letting them clash. But when only one person is always explaining, the other gradually stops feeling the need to understand at all. The third sign is more subtle, and also the one most people overlook. It's when you begin adjusting yourself just to keep things calm. You speak less than before, not because you have nothing to say, but because you don't want to create tension. You soften your reactions, choose gentler words, even though there are things inside you that remain unsaid. And many times, you let things slide not because they're small, but because you believe silence will make life easier. At first, you tell yourself this is maturity, learning how to compromise in love, but over time, you start to realize you're no longer the same person you used to be. The things that once excited you, the viewpoints you once expressed naturally, you now keep inside your head. You weigh every sentence, every reaction, wondering whether saying it will make the atmosphere heavier. You don't change because you want to become better. You change because you're afraid that if you're too much yourself, the relationship won't survive. This is the moment when you begin shrinking yourself to keep the peace. No one forces you to do it. You do it because you care. But when a relationship only stays calm because one person keeps contracting, then that calm is being purchased with that person's identity. The fourth sign appears when you begin to clearly sense an imbalance but struggle to name it. You give more, not just a little more, but consistently more. You give time, attention, energy, and patience. You think about the relationship before you think about yourself. Meanwhile, she gives less, nothing but less, and usually only after you've already given first. At first, you don't dwell on it. You tell yourself that everyone loves differently, that as long as you're both still here, things are fine. But over time, you start noticing a pattern. You give 100, she gives 40, and gradually, that 40 becomes the new normal. It's no longer seen as lacking or temporary, it becomes the standard. This doesn't happen because she's bad or intentionally taking advantage of you. It happens because people quickly get used to what they receive. When someone is always there, always trying, always compensating, that effort slowly loses its perceived value. Not because it decreases, but because it's no longer rare. You can see this in many relationships. At the beginning, things feel balanced, but once one person starts giving more in order to hold the relationship together, the scale begins to tilt, and when it tilts long enough, both sides adapt. The giver becomes accustomed to having to try harder. The receiver becomes accustomed to not needing to try as much anymore. The problem with unequal effort isn't the numbers, it's the inertia. Once a relationship only functions because one person keeps pushing, that person will have to give more and more just to keep everything in the same place. The other person, even without bad intentions, will slowly begin to see receiving more as normal. And that sense of normalcy is what makes the relationship dangerous. Because when giving is no longer felt as valuable, it no longer generates the same respect it once did. The fifth sign appears when you realize you're constantly living in a state of worry. You worry about losing her, even though nothing major has happened. You're afraid of saying the wrong thing, afraid one careless sentence might shift the atmosphere. Before you speak, you quickly run the words through your head. Is this okay? Will it upset her? Will it lead to conflict? You start paying attention to her reactions more than necessary. A slow reply, a change in tone, a prolonged silence, all of it makes you tense, not because you're overly sensitive, but because you're now attached to the relationship through fear. Fear of losing the connection, fear of change, fear that if you're not careful, the distance will grow. This is what people call attachment, but you don't need complex terms to understand it. Simply put, you no longer feel safe being yourself. You love, but you love while on guard. You care, but you care with anxiety attached. And the most important thing to remember is this love should not keep you in a constant state of tension. A healthy relationship isn't always easy, but it doesn't make you feel like you have to tiptoe every step of the way. If most of the time you're living in vigilance, then perhaps what's keeping you there isn't love, but fear of losing it. The sixth sign is the one you feel most clearly, even if you've never put a name to it. It's when your body's always tired after being with her. Not the kind of tired that comes from having fun, talking a lot, or being physically active, but a very different kind of exhaustion. A drained kind. After seeing her, you don't feel lighter, you don't feel recharged, you go home wanting silence, you don't want to talk to anyone. Sometimes you don't even want to do your usual everyday things. At first, you might blame work, life, or your lack of balance. But if this happens repeatedly, there's a good chance your body's trying to tell you something. The body doesn't analyze or rationalize, but its reactions are honest. When you're with someone who requires constant adjustment, constant thinking, constant restraint, and constant worry, your energy is naturally depleted. You don't need to be in dramatic pain for it to be a problem. It's enough to notice that after each time together, you're not happier, not stronger, you're simply emptier. And the key insight here is this: the mind can convince itself for a very long time, but the body doesn't know how to lie. If being with someone regularly leaves you exhausted, that is the most reliable signal you have. The seventh sign is the deepest one, and also the one that keeps you stuck the longest. It's when you live on hope. You believe that one day she'll be different, that things will get better when circumstances change, when she understands, or when you try just a little harder. You tell yourself that everyone needs time, that every relationship goes through difficult phases, and that isn't wrong. Hope isn't a negative thing. Hope helps people survive many heavy periods. But the problem begins when only one person is the one hoping. You hope that actions, emotions, and effort continue to flow in only one direction. You look to the future to compensate for a present that doesn't feel right. You believe in a version of her that you think will appear, more than the version standing in front of you every day. Gradually, hope becomes the reason you keep giving, keep enduring, keep waiting. The crucial thing to recognize is this hope itself isn't wrong, but a relationship cannot run on the hope of one person alone. When you're the only one who believes things will change, what's keeping the relationship alive isn't a real connection, it's your one-sided belief. If you've listened this far and recognized yourself in some of these signs, the most important thing to say is this: no one is entirely right, and no one is entirely wrong in a relationship. Giving more doesn't mean you're weak, and it doesn't mean she's a bad person. It simply shows that the balance has been tilted for long enough. When that happens, both people change in very natural ways. You try harder to hold on, while she gradually gets used to receiving, not out of malice, but because humans adapt very quickly to what they have. No one here is telling you that you must leave, and no one is telling you that you must stay. That decision is always yours. What matters is that you clearly see where you're standing and what you're giving. When one person gives too much, the other rarely notices what's being lost. Not losing you immediately, but slowly losing respect. Losing the sense of appreciation for what once felt valuable. Rebalancing doesn't always mean changing the other person. Sometimes it starts simply by stopping, observing, and asking yourself whether you're still giving out of love or giving out of fear of losing. If you want to understand more deeply why giving too much reduces respect in a relationship, the next video goes straight into that. Not to blame anyone, but to help you protect yourself better.